ones who got off that roller coaster are still going to die. Unless we can figure out how to stop it.
I never thought I could see my own death before it happened.
Welcome back to the 11th annual Halloween special. Tonight we're talking about the third film in the franchise that's all about death catching up to you, Final Destination 3. The film came out in 2006 and saw the return of James Wong, the director of the first film. And here, high school student Wendy Christensen, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, fails to stop the ill-fated roller coaster ride that she predicted would cause the deaths of several of her friends. She teams up with schoolmate Kevin Fisher in a race against time to prevent death from revisiting the survivors of that amusement park accident. I'm kind of a big fan of the Final Destination franchise. I respect them a lot. It's one of the very few teen-based horror franchises that doesn't have a corporeal presence trying to kill them. There's no masked man holding a knife, machete, or chainsaw. It's just death, and it's pissed that it was cheated. So the filmmakers of the Final Destination franchise have to rely completely on tension and misdirection, setting up a series of what you could call traps, really. I mean, they're not actually traps, but they kind of are, where you think it's going to go one way, but it goes another, and James Wong originated that with his first and very good Final Destination film, so it was really nice to see him come back to the franchise. The film was also composed by Shirley Walker, and this, and later that year, Black Christmas, were her final film scores. And I think we lost a truly great composer who needs to be mentioned a lot more often. Her score for Batman Mask of the Phantasm, I think, will be remembered for a very long time amongst fans. I enjoy Final Destination 2 a lot, and that film gave my generation a considerable fear of trucks transporting logs on the highway. If anybody of my generation sees trucks and logs on a highway, we change lanes. We get out of there. That's it. We get off at an early exit if we have to. We're never behind those things. Final Destination 3 did that for tanning beds. This film has a horrific sequence where two women are slowly burned to death inside a tanning bed that's gone completely out of control and the temperature won't stop rising. It's a pretty terrifying sequence in a film that not everyone views as one of the best of the franchise. I certainly don't think it's the worst. The Final Destination reserves that title. But I do like this one a hair more than 2, and I think one of the biggest reasons is our protagonist, Wendy, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. This is the best case scenario for anyone who's trying to make a horror film with a largely teen or early 20s cast. You really want to find someone who's either on the rise or who is so good that this film will be their first in a long series of successes. And watching the film now, it gets this extra boost of star power because Mary Elizabeth Winstead has gone on to do a lot of great things like Scott Pilgrim and 10 Cloverfield Lane. She's a phenomenal actress, and it's very clear here as you watch the film that she was on another level from most of her castmates. For that reason, this film has one of my favorite lead protagonists of the entire franchise, and I think she's great in it. It's also loaded with mid-2000s tech, like this Mac with that old see-through mouse. Whatever happened to see-through electronics? Man, I really miss that. That was one of my favorite things as a kid. Like, you would get a Game Boy and you could see all the parts inside. It's such a simple thing, but the idea that as a kid I could see oh, so those are all the parts that make this thing work. And at a funeral in the movie, one of the characters is like, this is so boring, it would be better with a PSP. Speaking of that tanning bed scene, it has a terrific cut, going from their tanning beds to their coffins. Amongst all of the Final Destination films, though, they all have a big setup that sort of starts the premonition off. This one is at an amusement park, and I love the setting. I have a real soft spot for amusement parks and movies, and so I get excited about that every time I watch it. And I love the sequence where the roller coaster crashes. It's very well directed, the camera work is extremely dynamic, but there's someone in this scene, and no doubt throughout the entire portion of the film that character survives, that's far scarier than death being cheated and coming for you. And that's the character Frankie Cheeks, who is 100% a serial killer in the making. He follows girls everywhere with a camera, keeps asking them to get naked for his camera, keeps harassing them and insinuating that he would do things to them if they wanted, and of course they keep saying no, fuck off, leave, go away. Doesn't listen, keeps filming them. Absolutely 100% the most terrifying thing in the movie, but he has a great death, so it makes it all worthwhile. The only time in the film that I detached from Wendy, our protagonist, is when she berates her friend for knowing a little bit about SpongeBob.
Could there be anything in these prizes?
Or what, like he's gonna get crushed by a giant SpongeBob? Hey, SpongeBob lives underwater.
It's so sad that you know that.
Girl, that is the most basic knowledge of SpongeBob. It's the opening line of the intro song. He lives in a fucking pineapple. Where? Under the sea. Do not insult me, because I know way more about SpongeBob than that. I'm just saying. It was fun tonight to watch this movie with a friend who had never seen it, because he was expecting it to be super, super gory right from the beginning. But one of the things I like that James Wong did is each kill builds on the gore level. The first few are sort of gory, but not really. The tanning bed sequence has a little bit of gore, but it's really just like skin bubbling and two girls burning to death. So it's really horrifying. It's not so much like fun per se. But the more fun deaths in the movie get increasingly bloodier and bloodier as the film goes on. So he kind of built the gore factor. He didn't just start with it and make you feel like you've already experienced everything the film has to offer. He let us get there, because the last few deaths are gloriously bloody. There's also an emotional element to the movie that I do think could have been explored a lot more, because it's very strong, it's a good idea. And that's that at the beginning of the film, Wendy's friend tells her she's about to break up with her boyfriend. She's going to give him a few more months. And then she dies and doesn't get a chance to tell him that. Later on in the movie, that same boyfriend who survived tells Wendy, I was going to propose to her. And you get this great cutaway to Wendy where she's like, yeah, that wouldn't have worked out. And it feels very tragic. To be completely honest, it kind of reminds me of the Bruce Wayne, Rachel, Alfred element of The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, where Alfred knows that Rachel picked Harvey Dent, but Bruce doesn't. It's a really strong element that was not explored enough and could have made the film even better. I would say the most disappointing element of Final Destination 3 is that its ending feels very abrupt. And there were a lot of reshoots and different versions of scenes. There's a lot of special features on the DVD that sort of explore various aspects of almost a choose-your-own-adventure kind of narrative, which unfortunately does come across in the final 10 minutes or so. And I guess spoilers if you've never seen Final Destination 3, but near the end of the movie, when you think things have cooled down a little bit, we cut to 5 months later rather abruptly, and there's a set piece on a train. And the ending seems to suggest that everyone dies and that they didn't really cheat death. But she has a premonition on the train about her death and her friend's death. And then we zap back to present and she's like, oh my God, we have to get off the train, but she can't get off the train. So what's interesting about this is that it's almost like the film is presenting a rule-breaking scenario for the franchise where someone is given the premonition or has the premonition but can't do anything about it. There's no way to get off the subway train. And so the movie ends. It's an interesting and rather compelling idea. It's just that not only do I want our lead Wendy to survive this movie, it does kind of feel like the movie didn't know exactly how to end. And the first film also had a similar thing happen to it, but it felt more organic there. It's probably the weakest element of the Final Destination franchise, how to end them, because the entire structure of the narrative is always about like cheating death or making sure you don't die, or can we skip over somebody? How do we fix this? So there's obviously tons of ways that every movie could end. I still think that Final Destination 5 has the best ending of the entire franchise. If you've never seen that film, I won't spoil it for you, but it blew me away. Like, it's not like a masterpiece film or anything, but the ending is truly like pulled the rug out from under you. Final Destination 3 has always been a lot of fun for me. It's the first time I ever saw Mary Elizabeth Winstead in anything, and I instantly thought, I really hope she gets more work. This person is great. And I've always loved the amusement park element. The deaths are very fun. The ending doesn't quite work for me, but overall, I've always really enjoyed the film. So give it a watch this Halloween. Guys, thank you so much for continuing to watch the 11th annual Halloween special. Look forward to more videos very soon. And if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.